Thank you all for coming to the Mindset of Mentoring workshop. This workshop is sponsored by the Mentorship Committee. Don't join a breakout room just yet. We've got some content to cover first. So if you could go to the next slide. And we've got a larger group today, so we won't take time to introduce, but I do want to highlight just our speakers real quick. So Heather Campbell and Maija Holsti, they are going to be leading one of our breakouts, and we're the kind of creators of this particular workshop, thinking about mentorship and coaching in this day and age. And then myself, I'm Kat Anderson from School of Medicine, and Megan Fix and Jeneth. I can't say I forgot your last name, Jeneth. Sorry. Doria. We are doing another breakout on bias in mentoring. And then we have Thunder Jalili and Christy Kleinschmidt, who are going to be doing a session on pitfalls. And then we're going to come back together as a group. And so that's kind of who your hosts are today. So if you could go to the next slide. These are some of the objectives. We haven't talked a lot about what holistic mentoring is yet, so we're going to get a little bit of information on that. And then we're going to dive right into the breakouts. So you can go to the next slide. And this is our schedule. So those are the breakouts that I just highlighted at the beginning. Sorry, I'm trying to make up some time quick. Do a quick overview. We'll go into some breakout sessions. Everybody will get to participate in all of the breakouts, and then we'll come back and do some recap at the end. So with that, I will turn it over to Heather.
Thanks, Kat. I think you could probably just pull up the next slide. Thanks, Christy. I appreciate your help. I want to give a disclaimer up front that this is not a construct that I have developed on my own. I have seen this presented in other meetings, and we have referenced a couple of articles that will be provided to the group during our breakout session. But I think that this was something, when I've seen this presented, it was fairly transformational for me, and I want to be able to share it with other people. The first question I think that comes to mind is, what is holistic mentorship, and why would we want to do this? This is actually a statistic from the Harvard Business Review that 75% of professional men and women want to have a mentor, but only 37% have one. So there's clearly a need for mentorship. And they also go on to postulate in this Harvard Business Review article that the impact of most mentors is limited to a relatively narrow focus on career advancement. And this comes from an extensive library search trying to find best practices for mentorship. And there really are very few resources outside of purely mentorship focused on career development. So I'd like to discuss what holistic mentorship is and why you might want to consider incorporating this into your model. I'm going to present a framework that was developed by two African American professors at a predominantly white institution in the Midwest. They developed this framework initially to provide support for women of color who were attending their institution. There is very good data to support that women of color are at increased risk for emotional health, that they have low satisfaction with campus life, and that have higher dropout rates. And there's also good information to support that mentorship can reverse a lot of these trends, and that particularly on college campuses, that women who receive mentorship are more likely to reach their academic goals. They have higher satisfaction with their college experience, and they are more likely to be successful in their later career endeavors. I think that this model, although studied primarily at a college campus setting, is really applicable to all of us, not just to women, not just to individuals from underrepresented groups, but to everyone. And so the next slide is just a diagram of this model. The authors have titled this a holistic and intersectional ecologic framework for mentoring. Basically, it looks at 5 domains, all of which affect each other, but primarily all of which affect professional development. And their domains are relational, at which they define as how are the relationships in your life? Do you have supportive relationships in your life? They evaluate emotional health. They evaluate psychosocial well-being, academic performance, and all of these relate and interact with professional development. When you look at this, this might seem a little overwhelming. And so if this seems like a lot to you, think about why you're mentoring in the first place. And I have a couple of quotes here, one from Clay Christensen, who is a well-known former professor at the Harvard Business School, and the other from John Wooden, who is a Hall of Fame basketball coach. And I do think that most of us choose to mentor because we want to make a difference. And I think that these quotes were very inspirational to me about, being able to pass on what I've learned and maybe help somebody else not struggle quite as much. If this still doesn't convince you, then I've got another slide that makes you that maybe you can just think about that you just have a simple desire to pay it forward. Obviously, I will never be as famous as John Wooden. I won't write books like Clay Christensen, but I do have a desire to share my experience and to help make things easier for the next generation, or at least maybe remove some of the obstacles that I found difficult to overcome through being able to share my story and share advice. So our goal today is to present some simple ways to be able to incorporate holistic mentorship into your mentorship philosophy. It does not mean, and I don't think anyone here expects, that you will be able to be someone's mentor in all of these domains. I think what we're talking about here is just having all of these domains be able to be on the table for the conversation, and being able to assess, to really get to know your mentee and to be able to direct them toward resources that may be helpful. And this list of, breaking it down comes from another Harvard Business Review article that talks about how you can really get into these domains. And they talk about 6 steps that you can share your own story and then ask your mentee to share their story so that you understand what their goals are. You can ask deep questions. That's something we're going to talk about in our breakout room. I think a key point is to start with the end in mind, to ask your mentee what their definition of success is and how you can help them to achieve that. Rather than solving problems for people, teaching them to reflect and solve problems for themselves are probably one of the biggest legacies that you can pass on. Helping your mentee to understand their strengths and weaknesses. That's what's meant by unpacking your mentee's toolkit, and to lead by example. We'll be talking about this more and breaking it down in the first breakout session. And then we're also going to be able to have discussions about pitfalls in mentorship. That's coming in breakout room number 3, and also addressing bias in the mentorship relationship. And so with that, I think we're probably ready to take it away.
Okay, so I'll introduce the breakout room. So we're going to have 16 minutes in each breakout room. I'm just going to randomly assign participants to one of the 3 groups, and then you'll eventually get to all the 3 groups. Okay, but when you get in your breakout rooms, we have an assignment. One participant who's not a presenter in each breakout room, please identify yourself as somebody who wants to share back with the group what you learned, and that'll be in your first breakout. Okay? All right. Here we go. I'm going to open all rooms, and you should be able to go into your breakouts right now. And we're back. So one quick can I just ask the group members who have the handouts to put them in the chat again, just in case anybody didn't get the handouts? I'll put in one for group 2, and then Maija, I see you, and Christy, if you guys have one. So I'll put those in, and then we're back to Heather to wrap us up.
All right, now I'm unmuted. we had 3 breakout sessions. All of you were in each breakout session. I think what we decided to do is that there's one person from the first breakout room that you were a part of who's going to talk a little bit about what you discussed and the take-home points in each session. And our first breakout room is on holistic mentoring, and that our first group had Tim Farrell in it. And Tim, are you still here?
Sure am.
All right. Can you tell us a little bit about take-home points from that session? And certainly people from other breakout rooms, feel free to chime in as well.
Yeah, I think, I guess a couple key points included when you're a mentee, sometimes it can feel like you're sort of being steered in one direction. And we talked about how that can be good or bad if a mentor has knowledge that you don't as a mentee and kind of can see the bigger picture. But on the flip side, it doesn't usually work out well if you're doing a project that really is just not enjoyable or doesn't align with your career goals. So sort of figuring out that sweet spot. I think one of the second major things that came up was differences in mentorship that may occur by gender. So I think I was the only male participant in the group, but it seemed as though the women in the group felt they had more mentorship related to family roles and responsibilities, and that might be an area that we are overlooking for men, as men may be taking on more of those responsibilities as it affects their professional life. And please fill in anything that I missed.
No, Tim, that was excellent. It was interesting to me being in the breakout room, how the conversation really differed from group to group. And I would invite anyone else who has comments on holistic mentorship to share those. And if there aren't, I would just say briefly from, I think Maija and I would agree with this. One of the common themes, I think, from all of the groups was that to really be able to understand your mentee's life, that it really requires the willingness to be a little vulnerable on the part of the mentor, to share your own stories and to share some of your own struggles. And and then the second part is being willing to listen. And because we've had some very powerful stories shared in this breakout room, and one of the common threads that I really noticed is that people who had really positive mentorship experiences, those mentors were really willing to listen. And so I will go with that said, I'll move on to breakout room 2, which is where you talked about addressing bias and strategies for managing bias. Now, I am not sure who the spokesperson was for. Oh, Joe, great. Mm-hmm. Take it away.
Yep. And so I think I'm just going to recap kind of the things that we talked about around kind of bias and mitigating bias in a mentoring relationship. And what we talked about, kind of the take-home points were being aware about your biases, and then a reminder that one of the tools for that is being able to take the implicit association test. And I do love the recommendation too from the group around that, which is that it's useful to use that as a tool within a team or with an intention, but it's not necessarily a great tool just in isolation to use on its own. As a side note, we use that as part of our advising or our admissions process in our program, but we do it as it's like structured with our admissions process. So other things that we pointed out with that were the importance of listening. And so, and with that, like if somebody does point out bias, especially if it comes from a mentee, being sure to actually stop and to hear that and to acknowledge that. And then to adjust from there. And then the next take-home point was to refute, reassociate, and reframe to reset your bias. And so that we also, when you listen and you can hear the bias, and we can name something, we can change the perspective of it, we can change the language that we use, because language is so important. And then that I think a big take home point from the whole thing is that implicit bias is actually something that we all utilize every day, and itself is not inherently bad, but it can be bad um, when it can negatively affect other people, including our mentees. And so one of the tactics for managing that is to slow down, because we use more implicit bias when we're moving faster, because it's a cognitive shortcut, right? And so so being sure to take the time to slow down in order to mitigate that bias. And then, which just related also to breakout room one and what Tim was saying though too, is like that taking time to get to know the person you are working with. That's this common thread, right? And so in the last one, it's like you can get to know them by being vulnerable, and then with this one, it's like, and you also need to like listen actively. You need to, and and hear them and listen without a preconceived notion about who they are.
Thanks so much, Joe. That was a really great sum up of bias and strategies. Thanks. Did anyone else have any comments from this breakout session? All right. Seeing none, we will move on to breakout room 3, which addressed tailoring your mentorship and avoiding pitfalls. I'm not sure who the spokesperson might be for this group.
I don't know. Is it supposed to be me? I'm not sure, but I'll be happy to.
Thank you, Nancy.
To share. So we we did the word clouds, and it was interesting to me that a place where most people seem to feel that they did have mentoring was in their personal and family life, yet at the same time, the area where people did not feel that they had a lot of mentoring was in work-life balance. And so those things kind of overlapped. So I thought that was interesting. And then we discussed various mentor situations, personal situations that we've experienced, and both positive and negative experiences. And I think we came away, sorry. Why would somebody come to my door right now? And I think we all agreed that it's really important to have a good relationship with the mentor, and that the mentor actually takes the time to get to know you and sincerely cares about your success or whatever goals that you have in the relationship. And finding that good fit is really key to success. We didn't really discuss, but I do have a question about, when is it appropriate to say this is just not working, and let's rearrange things and find a different combination, because I think sometimes you have to do that.
I would completely agree with that. I don't know if I have the best answer, but I have taken that to advice given to me by one of my mentors, which is being clear is kind. And if you're able to communicate that clearly, it's quite possible that the other person in that mentorship relationship is feeling the exact same thing, that it's just not a very good fit. And I think giving them an out to say, maybe this isn't going to work out the way that we both intended for it to, and what can I do to help you be successful in finding a mentor that really is able to fulfill the needs and to help you achieve your definition of success. And I would welcome any other comments on that question.
I would just say that sometimes it does come to that, where the relationship just doesn't work out and you have to take the next step. I think recognizing it and doing something about it rather than putting it off is key. When we have been in that situation in our department, we've put kind of a time limit on it, and tried to come up with a new strategy for mentor and mentee, and put a kind of an observation time period, and then do regular follow-ups, like monthly follow-ups. And if in a few months, things really haven't substantially changed, then that's the time to be honest and be professional and say, maybe it's time, to try different situation. It's never easy, but you just have to be professional and honest about it.
Totally agree. Thank you so much, everybody, for your comments. I apologize for interrupting, but we need to get back to the main room because I think there's e-posters. But thank you again for joining our session. And just that, we are part of the mentorship committee for the AHSE. So if you like what you see, come join our committee because it's a really fun group. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.